They say you never really know someone until money is involved. I learned that lesson at 70, 2 years old, sitting alone in an airport terminal, clutching a one-way ticket I never asked for, watching my phone light up with call after call from the son I'd just given everything to. The same son who'd hugged me 30 minutes earlier, smiled at his wife over my shoulder, and drove away without looking back. That's when I realized. I hadn't just signed away my house. I'd signed away my worth in their eyes. But what they didn't know was that I still had something they couldn't take. My voice, my will, and one very loyal friend who'd been warning me all along. Before I begin my story, let me know in the comments where you are listening from and what time it is. I just want to know I'm not alone in this. And if you feel moved by what you hear, consider subscribing. It helps more people become aware of the reality of elder abuse. Now let me tell you what really happened. The morning started like any other Tuesday, except it wasn't. I just didn't know it yet. I woke up at 6:30 like I always do, made my coffee in the same ceramic mug my husband James gave me 20 years ago, and sat in my favorite chair by the living room window. The sun was just coming up over the neighborhood, casting that soft golden light across the hardwood floors James and I had refinished ourselves back in 1989. Every scratch, every worn spot told a story. Our story, this house had been our dream. We'd saved for 7 years to afford the down payment. I still remembered the day we got the keys. I was 32, James was 34, and Derek was just a baby. We'd carried him through that front door in his little carrier, both of us grinning like fools, promising we'd make this house a home filled with love and laughter. And we had. For 40 years, this house had been everything. It had seen Derek's first steps, his birthday parties, his high school graduation. It had held us through James's long illness 5 years ago, and it had comforted me in the lonely years since he'd passed. These walls knew my grief, my healing, my quiet joy in tending the garden James had planted. But according to Derek and Vanessa, it was too much for me now. "Mom, you're 72. Derek had said just 3 weeks ago, sitting right there on my sofa with Vanessa beside him, her hand on his knee. "You shouldn't be dealing with all this maintenance. The roof, the plumbing, the yard work. What if something happens and you're all alone?" I managed just fine, I told him, though my voice was softer than I meant it to be. "But for how long?" Vanessa had chimed in, her voice dripping with concern that didn't quite reach her eyes. "We love you, Maggie. We just want what's best for you. And honestly, keeping up this big house at your age, it's not safe." They'd been saying things like this for months. Little comments here and there. "Mom, did you forget to lock the back door again?" "Mom, I noticed you're moving slower on the stairs." "Mom, wouldn't it be easier to live somewhere with people your own age? Somewhere with activities and help if you need it." At first, I'd brushed it off. But they kept coming back, kept pressing, kept painting this picture of me as some fragile, confused old woman who couldn't be trusted to manage her own life. And slowly, shamefully, I'd started to believe them. My friend Linda had seen right through it. "Maggie, they want your house," she'd said bluntly 2 weeks ago over lunch at our favorite diner. Linda had been my teaching colleague for 30 years before we both retired. She didn't sugarcoat things. "They've been circling like vultures ever since James passed. Can't you see it? Linda, that's my son you're talking about." I'd protested, feeling defensive and uncomfortable. "He's worried about me. He's worried about himself." Linda had shot back. "Have you looked up property values in this neighborhood lately? Your house is worth over $600,000 now, maybe more. And you own it free and clear." I'd felt sick hearing that. Not because of the number. I knew the neighborhood had changed, gotten more expensive. But because of what Linda was implying. Derek wouldn't he? Linda had fixed me with those sharp brown eyes of hers. When was the last time he visited before all this concern started? When was the last time he called just to see how you were doing, not to talk about the house? I hadn't been able to answer that. Because she was right. Derek had been distant for years. Busy with his work, his life, his friends. We'd talk on holidays, maybe a Sunday call once a month. But ever since James died, and especially in the last 6 months, he'd become so attentive, so caring, so insistent that I needed to make arrangements and plan for the future. And today was the day. The day I was supposed to sign the papers that would transfer the deed to Derek's name. For safekeeping. While I moved to a retirement community in Florida near my sister Carol, Vanessa had found the place. Sunny Palm Gardens. She'd shown me the glossy brochure with smiling seniors playing shuffleboard and doing water aerobics. "It's perfect for you, Maggie!" And Carol is just 20 minutes away. You'll have family nearby and no responsibilities. No more worrying about repairs or yard work or being alone. The way she'd said, alone, had stung. Like being alone was the worst possible thing. Like I hadn't chosen my solitude some days, treasured it even. But I'd agreed. Because they'd worn me down, made me doubt myself, made me feel like I was being stubborn and foolish to want to stay in my own home. And because some small, hurting part of me wanted to believe my son really did have my best interests at heart. At 9 o'clock sharp, Derek's car pulled into my driveway. I watched from the window as he and Vanessa got out, both dressed nicely. Derek wore a button-down shirt I didn't recognize, and Vanessa had on a cream-colored blazer. They looked like they were going somewhere important. They looked like they were going to a business meeting. I opened the door before they could knock. "Morning, Mom." Derek's smile was bright, maybe too bright. He hugged me, and I caught a whiff of his cologne. When had Derek started wearing cologne? "You ready for the big day?" "I suppose so," I said, trying to match his cheerfulness and failing. Vanessa swept in behind him, carrying a leather folder. "This is so exciting, Maggie!" "A new chapter in your life. You're going to love Florida, and we'll take such good care of the house for you. It'll be here whenever you want to visit." Something about the way she said that. "Whenever you want to visit," made my stomach clench. This was my house. Why would I need to visit my own house? But I pushed the thought away. Derek had brought a notary, a stern-looking woman named Ms. Rodriguez, who sat up at my dining room table with barely a greeting. The same table where Derek had eaten countless meals as a boy. The same table where James and I had done our taxes every year, where we'd played cards with friends, where I'd graded papers late into the night. "Let's go over the documents," Ms. Rodriguez said, spreading papers across the polished wood. I tried to read them, I really did. But the legal language swam before my eyes. Words like grantor and grantee and transfer of title and irrevocable. I looked up at Derek, confused. "It's just standard legal stuff, Mom," he said quickly, pulling up a chair next to me. "Basically, you're transferring the house to me so I can manage it for you. You'll still have access anytime you want. We're just making it easier. One less thing for you to worry about." "And the retirement community?" I asked. "That's all arranged, all set," Vanessa assured me, though I noticed she didn't hand me any papers about that. "Your apartment is ready the 1st of next month. Carol is thrilled you're coming." I hadn't actually spoken to Carol about this in detail. We'd had one brief phone call where Vanessa had done most of the talking, and Carol had said, "Well, if that's what you want, Maggie." But I'd been too embarrassed to admit I wasn't sure what I wanted anymore. "Where do I sign?" I heard myself ask. "Ms. Rodriguez pointed to several spots. Derek handed me a pen, a fancy one, silver and heavy. I held it over the first line and hesitated. "Mom." Derek's hand touched my shoulder. "You okay?" "Was I?" I looked around my dining room, at the built-in china cabinet holding my grandmother's dishes, at the light fixture James had installed, at the photos on the wall, Derek as a baby, as a little boy, as a young man at his college graduation. This is a big step," I said softly. "It's the right step," Vanessa said firmly. "You're being so brave, Maggie, so smart. Not everyone has the courage to downsize and simplify at your age." At my age. There it was again. That reminder that I was old, that I should be grateful for their help, that I should stop clinging to the past. I signed. Each signature felt like I was carving away a piece of myself. My hand shook on the last one. "Excellent," Ms. Rodriguez said, stamping and dating each document with businesslike efficiency. She had me initial here and there, made Derek sign, then packed everything up with the speed of someone with another appointment waiting. "You'll receive copies in the mail." "Congratulations, congratulations." I almost laughed. It felt more like condolences. After Ms. Rodriguez left, Derek and Vanessa exchanged a look. Just a quick glance, but I caught it. And in that moment, I saw something that made my blood run cold. Relief, not happiness for me. Not satisfaction that they'd helped their aging mother. But relief, like they'd been holding their breath and could finally exhale. Vanessa actually smiled at Derek. A real smile, private and pleased. And Derek, my son, my only child, smiled back. Then they seemed to remember I was there. Well, Vanessa said brightly, clapping her hands together. That went smoothly. Now, Maggie, about your flight to Florida. Flight, I interrupted. I thought I wasn't moving until next month. Right, right, Derek said, but he wouldn't quite meet my eyes. But we thought it would be good for you to go see the place now, spend some time with Carol, get acclimated. So we booked you a flight for this afternoon. This afternoon. My voice came out sharper than I intended. Derek, I haven't even packed. I have things to take care of here. Already handled. Vanessa interrupted, her smile never wavering. We can ship whatever you need. But honestly, Maggie, the retirement community is furnished. You won't need much, just some clothes, personal items. We can pack that up in an hour. And they did. They moved through my house like a choreographed team, Vanessa directing what should go in the 2 suitcases they'd brought, Derek carrying things out to the car. I stood in the middle of my bedroom, watching them sort through 40 years of my life with the casual efficiency of people clearing out a storage unit. Don't worry about the rest, Vanessa kept saying. We'll take care of it. We'll make sure everything is safe. When everything happened so fast. One moment I was signing papers, the next I was being hustled out my front door with 2 packed bags, leaving behind almost everything I owned. I didn't even get to say goodbye to the house properly. Didn't get to walk through each room one last time. Didn't get to stand in the garden James had loved. In the car, Derek drove while Vanessa sat in the back with me. She kept up a steady stream of chatter about Florida, about the weather, about how much fun I was going to have. I stared out the window, watching my neighborhood slip by. The park where I'd pushed Derek on the swings. The library where I'd taken him for story time. The corner store where James always bought his newspaper. All of it fading away. At the airport, Derek pulled up to departures and popped the trunk. He got my bags out, set them on the curb, and handed me my ticket. You're all checked in, he said, giving me a quick hug. Gate B7. The flight leaves in 2 hours. Have a great time with Carol, and we'll call you soon. You're not coming in? I asked, feeling suddenly, desperately lonely. Can't, Mom. We've got that thing, remember? He glanced at Vanessa, who nodded meaningfully. What thing? They'd never mentioned anything. Okay, I whispered. Vanessa hugged me too, a brief squeeze that smelled of expensive perfume. Safe travels, Maggie. You're doing the right thing. The brave thing. And then they were gone. Back in the car, pulling away from the curb. I stood there with my 2 suitcases watching their taillights disappear into traffic. I was 72 years old, and I'd just been dropped off at an airport like a piece of luggage. Slowly, mechanically, I made my way through security and to my gate. Gate B7. I found a seat in the corner, away from the other travelers, and sat down with my purse clutched in my lap. The airport buzzed with life around me. Families laughing. Business people on phones. Young couples holding hands. Coming from somewhere, connected to somewhere. And me. Alone. Heading to a place I'd never chosen, to live a life I'd never wanted. I looked down at my phone. No messages. No calls. Nothing from Derek or Vanessa making sure I'd made it okay, that I'd found my gate, that I was all right. That's when it started to sink in. Really sink in. What had I just done? And more importantly, what had they just done to me? I sat at gate B7 for what felt like hours, though when I checked my watch, only 20 minutes had passed. Time had become strange, stretching and contracting in ways that made me feel untethered from reality. Around me, life continued. A mother bounced a fussy baby on her hip. A businessman typed furiously on his laptop. A teenage girl talked loudly on her phone about some boy named Tyler who apparently didn't text back fast enough. Normal life. Normal problems. I looked down at my boarding pass. Flight 2847 to Fort Lauderdale, seat 23, one way. That detail suddenly felt enormous. I pulled out my phone and opened my email, scrolling back through the confirmation Derek had forwarded to me. There it was, one-way ticket. Not round trip. No return date. Why would they book me a one-way ticket if I was just going to visit and get acclimated? My hands started to shake. I set the phone down on the seat beside me and pressed my palms against my thighs, trying to steady myself. Breathe, Maggie. You're being paranoid. They explained this. You're moving there next month anyway. It makes sense to book one way. But did it? Really? I picked up my phone again and did something I should have done weeks ago. I typed Sunny Palm Gardens Retirement Community Fort Lauderdale into the search bar. The first result was their official website: smiling seniors, palm trees, promises of active living and community engagement. I clicked on the pricing tab. Studio apartment $3,200 per month, one bedroom, $4,500 per month, plus additional fees for meals, activities, and care services. I felt the air leave my lungs. Carol lived on a teacher's pension, just like me. There was no way she could help me with those costs, and my own pension and social security combined came to about $2,800 a month. I couldn't afford this place, not even the studio, not without depleting my savings, and even then I'd run out of money in a few years. Had Derek and Vanessa not known this? Or had they known and simply not cared? No, stop it, Maggie. They must have a plan. Maybe Derek was going to help financially. Maybe there were subsidies or assistance programs. There had to be an explanation. But even as I tried to reassure myself, Linda's words echoed in my head. They want your house, my house. Worth over $600,000. Now legally in Derek's name. I opened my phone's call log. The last call from Derek had been 3 days ago, confirming today's appointment with the notary. Before that, nothing for a week. I scrolled back further. For someone who was supposedly so worried about his elderly mother living alone, Derek's call history told a different story. But Vanessa called more regularly, or had until about 2 weeks ago. I looked at the pattern of calls and texts. For 3 months, she'd been in constant contact, checking on me, suggesting the retirement community, sending me articles about seniors and home safety, asking about my assets, my insurance, my estate planning. And then, after I'd finally agreed to sign the papers, the calls had dropped off dramatically. I felt sick. A new text appeared on my screen, and I jumped. But it wasn't from Derek or Vanessa. It was from Carol. Hey sis, Derek called and said you're coming to visit today. Why didn't you tell me? I'm at a conference in Orlando until Friday. Won't be home. Are you sure about this timing? I stared at the message. Read it again. Then a third time. Carol didn't know I was coming. Not really. And she wouldn't even be there. Derek and Vanessa had known this. They must have. But they'd told me Carol was thrilled that she'd be there, that I'd have family nearby. They'd lied. My fingers were trembling so badly I could hardly type a response. Can I call you? 3 dots appeared immediately. Then yes. Now okay? I hit the call button before I could second-guess myself. Maggie, what's going on? Carol's voice was tight with concern. Derek made it sound like you were moving down here permanently. But that can't be right. You love your house. My voice cracked. Carol, I think I made a terrible mistake. What kind of mistake? And then it all came pouring out. The months of pressure, the comments about my age, my ability to manage, the retirement community brochure, the signing this morning, the rushed packing, being dropped at the airport like unwanted cargo. Carol was silent for a long moment after I finished. Maggie, she finally said, and her voice was cold with anger. Tell me you didn't sign the house over to him. The way she said it, the certainty in her tone that I had in fact done exactly that, made shame burn through me. He said it was for safekeeping, that he'd manage it for me while I was in Florida, that I could visit any time. Oh, Maggie, Carol's voice broke. Honey, you need to listen to me very carefully. That retirement community costs over $4,000 a month. I looked into it for myself last year and couldn't afford it. Can you? No, I whispered. I just looked it up. I can't. Then why would Derek send you there? The question hung in the air between us. We both knew the answer. He's not planning to help you pay for it, Carol said gently. He's planning to sell the house. And once it's sold, once that money is in his account, what do you think happens to you? I couldn't answer. Couldn't speak past the tightness in my throat. Maggie, you need to come home. Right now. Don't get on that plane. But I already signed the papers. The deed can be challenged. This is elder financial abuse, Maggie. Undue influence. You have rights. Elder financial abuse. The words felt like a slap. That was something that happened to other people. Vulnerable people. Confused people. But wasn't that exactly what Derek and Vanessa had made me believe I was? I don't know what to do, I admitted, and tears started falling down my cheeks. An older man across from me glanced over, concern flickering across his face, but I looked away. First, do not board that plane, Carol said firmly. Second, call Linda. You need someone there with you. Third, find a lawyer who specializes in elder law. This happened this morning, right? The ink is barely dry. There's still time to fight this. Carol, he's my son. The words came out as a sob. I know, honey. I know. And I'm sorry. But right now, you need to protect yourself. Can you do that? Can you be strong? Could I? I'd spent the last few months feeling weak, old, incompetent. But sitting here in this airport, abandoned and lied to, something else was rising up inside me. Something that felt like anger. Yes, I said, and my voice was steadier than I expected. Yes, I can. Good. Now hang up and call Linda. Then call me back once you're somewhere safe. I'm cancelling my conference sessions and coming home early. I'll be there by tomorrow morning. After Carol hung up, I sat for a moment, just breathing. People continued to flow past me. The departure board flickered with updates. Someone's coffee smelled rich and dark. I was still here, still in my home city, still close enough to go back and fix this. If I was brave enough, I pulled up Linda's number and pressed call. She answered on the second ring. Maggie.
Aren't you supposed to be on a plane?
Linda. My voice wavered. You were right. About ever need help. Where have you? Airport. Gate B7. Don't move. I'm coming to get you. I heard rustling on her end, keys jangling. Did you sign the papers? Yes. This morning, Linda swore, which was unusual for her. Okay, we'll deal with that. Just stay put. I'm 20 minutes away, and Maggie? Yes. You did the right thing by calling. We're going to fix this. After we hung up, I looked at my phone's home screen. Still no calls or messages from Derek or Vanessa. Almost 2 hours since they'd dropped me off, and not a single check-in. That told me everything I needed to know. I stood up, my legs a bit unsteady, and walked to the ticket counter. Excuse me? I said to the young woman behind the desk. I need to cancel my flight. Certainly, ma'am. May I see your boarding pass? I handed it over, watching as she typed on her computer. There will be a cancellation fee, since this is a one-way ticket purchased less than 24 hours ago. I don't care about the fee. She looked up, seeming to really see me for the first time. Whatever she saw in my face made her expression soften. Let me see what I can do, she said quietly, and typed some more. Okay, I've cancelled the reservation. The fee it is medical reasons. She gave me a small, knowing smile. You'll receive a credit for the full amount. Thank you, I managed. Are you okay, ma'am? Someone's coming for me, but thank you. Really? I returned to my seat, but I didn't sit down. Instead, I stood there, looking out the wall of windows at the planes taking off and landing, coming and going, journeys beginning and ending. My journey wasn't ending. It was just taking a different path than the one Derek and Vanessa had planned for me. And then my phone rang. I looked down at the screen. Derek. My finger hovered over the answer button. Part of me wanted to ignore it, to let him wonder, to make him worry the way he'd made me worry. But a bigger part of me needed to hear his voice now, needed to hear what he would say when he thought everything had gone according to plan. I answered. Mom. Thank God. I've been trying to reach you here. My call log showed this was his first attempt. Have you? I kept my voice neutral. Yes, the phone was just ringing and ringing. Are you at your gate? Did you make it okay? I'm at the airport, yes. Great. Listen, I just wanted to make sure you had Carol's address. I'll text it to you. And Mom, his voice shifted, became softer, more intimate. I know this is a big change, but I'm really proud of you. It takes courage to start over. As if I'd chosen this. As if it wasn't being forced on me. Derek, can I ask you something? Of course. How exactly am I supposed to afford sunny Palm Gardens? The rent alone is more than my entire pension. Silence. Long enough that I thought the call might have dropped. Derek! Mom, don't worry about that right now. We'll figure it out. Maybe there are payment plans or you'll sell the house and use that money. More silence. And in that silence, I heard everything he wasn't saying. Mom, we talked about this. No, Derek, we didn't. You told me you'd manage the house for me. You said I could visit any time. But what you meant was you'd sell it and keep the money while I, lived in a place I can't afford until the money runs out. Then what? A state facility. The street. Mom. Am I? My voice rose despite my efforts to stay calm. Several people near me looked over. I lowered my voice to a harsh whisper. I just looked up the retirement community you're sending me to. I can't afford it, Derek. So either you were planning to help support me indefinitely, which we both know isn't true, or you were counting on selling my house to fund it. A house that you now legally own. A house I signed over to you this morning because you convinced me I was too old and incompetent to manage my own life. Mom, if you're having second thoughts, I'm not getting on the plane. What? You heard me. I'm not going to Florida. I'm going home. To my house. The house that may be in your name now. But that doesn't make what you did right. Mum, you can't just. The ticket is non-refundable. I don't care about the ticket, Derek! I was shaking now, but with anger instead of fear. I care that my son, my only child, manipulated me and lied to me and is trying to steal my home. Steal? Mom, I would never. We're doing this for you. Don't. The single word cut through his protest. Don't you dare tell me this is for me. This is for you. You and Vanessa. How much is the house worth, Derek? 600,000. 7. How long have you been planning this? I heard Vanessa's voice in the background, urgent and shrill, though I couldn't make out the words. Mom, you're upset. Maybe you should just take some time to calm down. I'm perfectly calm. And I'm not getting on that plane. Someone is coming to pick me up. And Derek, we're going to fix this. One way or another. You can't undo the deed. It's legal. The papers are signed. We'll see about that. I hung up. My hands were still shaking, but this time it felt like power instead of weakness. Almost immediately, the phone started ringing again. Derek, I declined the call. It rang again. Declined. Again. Declined. Then texts started flooding in. Derek, Mom, please answer the phone. Derek, you're making a huge mistake. Derek, the house is legally mine now. There's nothing you can do. Vanessa, Maggie, we're only trying to help you. Why are you being so difficult? Derek, if you don't get on that plane, where are you going to live? That last one made me laugh, sharp and bitter. Where was I going to live? In my house. My home. The one I'd paid for, maintained, filled with love and memories for 40 years. Or I'd die trying. I blocked both their numbers. The sudden silence felt like a weight lifting off my chest. Through the window, I saw Linda's car pull up to the passenger pickup area. She got out, her silver hair catching the sunlight, her expression fierce and focused. My friend, my real family. I grabbed my suitcases and started walking toward the exit, away from gate B7. Away from the life Derek and Vanessa had planned for me, toward something uncertain but mine. I passed a woman about my age holding a baby, probably her grandchild, both of them laughing at something on the woman's phone. I thought about Derek as a baby, as a little boy who'd loved me unconditionally. Where had that boy gone? When had he become someone who could do this to his own mother? Or maybe he'd always been capable of it, and I just refused to see it. At the exit, Linda was waiting. She saw me coming and opened her arms. I walked into them and finally let myself cry. I've got you, she said firmly. We're going to make this right. And standing there in Linda's embrace, with the airport chaos swirling around us, I felt something I hadn't felt in months. Hope. Linda didn't ask questions until we were in the car and away from the airport. She just loaded my suitcases into her trunk, handed me a bottle of water, and started driving. Where to? She finally asked as we merged onto the highway. I realized I didn't know. My house, could I even call it that anymore, was legally Derek's now. Could I just show up there? What if he'd already changed the locks? I don't know, I admitted. Maybe a hotel. Absolutely not. You're coming to my place. Linda's tone left no room for argument. We'll figure out the rest tomorrow. Right now you need to eat something and rest. Linda, I'm sorry to drag you into this. Stop. She glanced over at me, her expression fierce. You're my friend, Maggie. This is what friends do. And honestly, I've been waiting for you to see the truth about Derek and that wife of his. I just wish you'd listened to me sooner. So do I said quietly. We drove in silence for a while. I watched the familiar streets pass by, the city I'd lived in for over 40 years. Everything looked the same, but I felt fundamentally changed, like I'd been one person this morning and was becoming someone else now. My phone buzzed in my purse. I pulled it out and saw I had 23 missed calls and 47 text messages. Derek and Vanessa had apparently created a group chat and were flooding it with messages. I handed the phone to Linda. Could you? She glanced at the screen while stopped at a red light. Her jaw tightened. They're panicking. Good. What are they saying? Lots of "we're worried about you. And please call us," mixed with some legal threats about the deed being binding and you having no claim to the property anymore. Linda set the phone in the cup holder. Ignore it. We'll deal with them tomorrow. Tonight, you need to focus on taking care of yourself. But I couldn't stop thinking about it. About Derek and Vanessa in my house. No. In their house now. Probably celebrating their victory. Had they already started going through my belongings? Were they measuring rooms for new furniture? Calling real estate agents? The thought made me physically ill. At Linda's apartment, she settled me on her couch with a blanket and a cup of tea. Her place was smaller than mine, a two-bedroom condo she'd downsized to after her divorce, but it was warm and comfortable. The walls were covered with photos of her kids and grandchildren, shelves full of books. I'm going to call my nephew, Linda said. Trevor. He's a lawyer, remember. Specializes in elder law. Linda, I can't afford. He'll do it pro bono if I ask. And before you argue, you can pay him back later if you want. Right now, we need to know what your options are legally. She picked up her phone. I'm also calling Carol back. She called me 3 times while I was driving to get you. I listened as Linda filled Carol in, using words like undue influence and financial abuse that made me flinch every time. That was my son she was talking about. My Derek. Except he wasn't, was he? Not anymore. Maybe he never had been. After she hung up, Linda sat down beside me. Trevor can see us first thing tomorrow morning at 9. He's already started looking into what we can do about the deed transfer. Carol is driving up tonight. She'll be here by midnight. You don't have to do all this, I said, tears threatening again. Yes, I do. Because you'd do it for me. And because what they did to you is wrong, Maggie. You know that, right? This isn't just a family disagreement. This is abuse. I nodded, unable to speak past the lump in my throat. Now, Linda said, standing up with purpose. You're going to eat the lasagna I made yesterday, take a hot shower, and try to get some sleep. Tomorrow we fight back. I wanted to argue, to say I wasn't hungry, but Linda was already in the kitchen heating up food. And the truth was, I hadn't eaten since breakfast. A piece of toast I'd forced down while Derek and Vanessa bustled around my kitchen, packing me up like I was already gone. The lasagna was good, rich with cheese and herbs. I ate mechanically at first, then with growing hunger. Linda sat across from me with her own plate, and we ate in comfortable silence. I finally said, anything. When did you first suspect about Derek and Vanessa? Linda set down her fork and thought for a moment. Honestly, about 6 months ago. Remember that lunch we had when Derek happened to stop by? I did remember. Derek had shown up at the restaurant, all smiles and surprise, giving me a big hug. He'd chatted with Linda, been charming and attentive. At the time, I'd been touched that he'd gone out of his way to see me. He asked me about your house, Linda continued. Wanted to know if I thought you could manage it alone. Asked if I'd noticed you forgetting things or seeming confused. Very concerned, son, very worried. She shook her head. But the whole time his eyes were calculating, and when I said you were sharp as ever and managing just fine, he looked disappointed. Disappointed. I repeated, the word bitter in my mouth. Then Vanessa started showing up more. The retirement community brochures. The constant talk about how hard it must be for you, how lonely, how overwhelming. They were building a narrative, Maggie. Making you doubt yourself. And it worked, I said. I started believing them. Started thinking maybe I was too old, too incompetent. Too much of a burden. That's what gaslighting does, Linda said gently. It makes you question your own reality, your own judgment. They're very good at it. My phone buzzed again. Then another. I turned it face down on the table. They're not going to stop, I said. No, they're not. Not until they realize you're serious about fighting back. Linda reached across and squeezed my hand. Which is why we need Trevor. We need to know exactly what we're dealing with legally. After dinner, I did as Linda suggested and took a long, hot shower. Under the spray, I finally let myself fall apart completely. I cried for the son I thought I had, for the trust that had been broken, for the home I'd lost, for the future I'd imagined, one where Derek would visit with grandchildren someday, where we'd have Sunday dinners and holiday gatherings, where I'd grow old surrounded by family who loved me. That future was gone. Even if I got my house back, even if I won this battle, I'd lost my son. Because how could I ever trust him again? How could I look at him without seeing the calculation in his eyes, the greed that had been hidden behind concerned smiles? When I finally emerged from the bathroom in borrowed pajamas, my eyes red and puffy, Linda had made up the guest room with fresh sheets, and left a glass of water on the nightstand. Carol called, she said. She's making good time. She'll be here around 11:30. I told her not to wake you if you're already asleep, but she wants to see you. I'll probably be awake, I admitted. Sleep seemed impossible right now, even though exhaustion pulled at every muscle. Try to rest anyway. Tomorrow is going to be a long day. But I couldn't rest. I lay in Linda's guest bed, staring at the ceiling, my mind replaying the day over and over. The signing, the rushed packing, the airport. Derek's voice on the phone, smooth and reassuring until I'd challenged him. Then the mask had slipped, just for a moment, and I'd seen the truth underneath. Around 11:30, I heard the front door open and Carol's voice in the living room. I got up and padded out to find my sister there, her suitcase still by the door, talking in low tones with Linda, Maggie. Carol crossed the room and pulled me into a tight hug. She was older than me by 3 years, her hair fully white now, her face lined with age and worry. I'm so sorry. I should have known something was wrong when Derek called me last month. What did he say? I asked as we all settled in the living room. He wanted to know about my experience looking at retirement communities. Asked if I'd recommend any. Said you were thinking about moving down to be near me. Carol's expression was grim. He made it sound like it was all your idea, that you'd asked him to research options. I believed him. We all believed him, Linda said. He's been playing this game for months, getting all the pieces in place. What I don't understand, Carol said, is what he plans to do now. You didn't get on the plane. You're clearly not going quietly. Does he really think he can just keep the house? According to his texts, the deed is legal and binding, Linda said. He seems to think Maggie has no recourse. That's what we'll find out tomorrow, I said, surprised by the steadiness in my own voice. Linda's nephew is a lawyer. He's going to tell us what we can do. Carol nodded. Good. Because I've been reading about elder financial abuse on the drive up, and what Derek did checks every single box. Isolation. Getting you away from your support system. Creating dependency. Making you think you can't manage on your own. Using his position of trust. He's your son. You'd naturally trust him. And rushing the transaction. You signed and were on your way to the airport within hours. Hearing it laid out like that, so clinical and clear, made it impossible to deny what had happened. I was so stupid, I whispered. No. Carol's voice was sharp. You were trusting. You were a mother who loved her son. That's not stupid. Maggie. What's stupid is what Derek and Vanessa did, thinking they could get away with this. Can they? I asked. Get away with it. The three of us looked at each other. We'll find out tomorrow, Linda said finally. But right now you need to try to sleep. Carol, you can take the couch. I'm fine here, Carol assured her. I just want to be close to my sister. Eventually, Linda convinced us both to at least lie down. Carol took the couch, and I returned to the guest room, but sleep was impossible. I could hear Carol tossing and turning in the other room, could see the light under Linda's door. None of us were sleeping. Around 2 in the morning, I finally gave up and went to the kitchen for water. Carol was already there, sitting at the table with a mug of tea. Can't sleep either, she asked. I shook my head and joined her at the table. I keep thinking about when Derek was little, Carol said. Remember that time he saved up all his allowance to buy you that necklace for Mother's Day? He was so proud. Couldn't stop grinning when you opened it. I remembered. A simple silver chain with a heart pendant. I'd worn it for years until the chain broke. Derek had been 7 years old. Where did that little boy go? I asked. I don't know. Maybe he grew up and life got complicated. Maybe Vanessa changed him. Or maybe, Carol hesitated, maybe he was always capable of this, I finished. And I just didn't want to see it. There were signs, Carol admitted. The way he talked about money. How he reacted when James left everything to you in the will instead of splitting it with him directly. Do you remember? I did. Derek had been upset, though he'd tried to hide it. But Dad left it to you. He'd said, what happens when you're gone? It should come to me automatically, right? At the time, I'd thought he was just being practical, thinking ahead. Now I wondered if it had been something darker. Mom and Dad tried to warn us, Carol said. They said marriage and money can bring out the worst in people. That we should never trust anyone completely when it comes to finances, even family. Especially family. I didn't want to believe that. Didn't want to be that cynical. It's not cynical. It's protective. There's a difference. Carol reached across and took my hand. But we're going to protect you now. All of us together. Linda, me, Trevor. We're your family, Maggie.
Not Derek. Not anymore.
Tears rolled down my cheeks, but I didn't wipe them away. I don't know if I'm strong enough for this fight. You are. You proved that today when you didn't get on that plane. I was terrified. Courage isn't the absence of fear. It's acting despite the fear. Carol squeezed my hand. Tomorrow we start fighting back, and we don't stop until we've made this right. We sat together in Linda's kitchen as the night slowly gave way to dawn, two sisters who'd weathered plenty of storms together, preparing for another one. And this time I wasn't going to let anyone, not even my own son, make me doubt my worth, my judgment, or my right to the life I'd built. This time, I was going to fight. Trevor Martinez arrived at Linda's apartment at 8:40, 15 minutes early, and carrying a leather briefcase that looked expensive but, well, worn. He was in his mid-30s, with Linda's sharp eyes and warm smile. "Aunt Linda," he greeted her with a hug, then turned to us. "You must be Maggie and Carol. I'm so sorry about what you're going through." We settled around Linda's dining table, which was covered with the documents I'd brought from my house. The deed transfer papers, my mortgage statements showing the house was paid off, my financial records, even the glossy Sunny Palm Gardens brochure. Trevor spent 20 minutes reading through everything in silence, occasionally making notes on a legal pad. The three of us sat quietly, exchanging worried glances. Finally, he looked up. "Okay," he said. "Let me start with the bad news, then we'll get to what we can do." My stomach dropped. The deed transfer is technically legal. You signed voluntarily in front of a notary. There's no evidence you were mentally incapacitated at the time. On paper, this looks like a straightforward property transfer from mother to son. But she was coerced, Carol protested. They manipulated her for months. I know, and that's where the good news comes in. Trevor leaned forward. What you've described is textbook elder financial abuse through undue influence. In our state, there are legal protections against this. We can petition to void the deed transfer on several grounds, or can. Hope flared in my chest. Yes. But I need to be honest with you. It's not a guarantee, and it won't be easy. We'll need to prove that Derek and Vanessa exerted undue influence, that you were in a vulnerable state, and that the transfer wasn't truly voluntary even though you signed the papers. He consulted his notes. The fact that they rushed you to the airport immediately after the signing is actually very helpful. That shows they didn't want you to have time to reconsider or seek advice. It demonstrates consciousness of guilt. What else do we need? Linda asked. Documentation. Testimony from people who witnessed their behavior. Any written communications where they pressured you or made false promises. Trevor looked at me. Maggie, do you have any text messages or emails from Derek or Vanessa? Anything that shows the pattern of manipulation? I pulled out my phone. Hundreds. They texted constantly for the last 3 months. Don't delete any of them. Those are evidence. Trevor made another note. We'll also want to document the financial impossibility of the Sunny Palm Gardens plan. If they knew you couldn't afford it, but pushed you toward it anyway while taking control of your primary asset, that shows their true intent wasn't to help you. How long will this take? I asked. If we file an emergency petition, we can potentially get a temporary restraining order preventing them from selling or significantly altering the property within a few days. The full case could take several months. He paused. I should also mention that this will likely destroy your relationship with your son, if it's not already destroyed. It is, I said quietly. The moment he dropped me at that airport and drove away, it was destroyed. Trevor nodded sympathetically. Then let's talk about next steps. First, I'm going to file an emergency petition this afternoon. Second, we need to document everything. I'll prepare a detailed affidavit for you to sign outlining the entire timeline of events. Third, we should probably report this to Adult Protective Services. Adult Protective Services. The words felt shameful somehow, like admitting I was a victim instead of just someone who'd made a bad decision. They investigate elder abuse cases, Trevor explained gently. Having their investigation on record strengthens our legal case. And Maggie, there's no shame in this. You're not the first person to be manipulated by a family member, and you won't be the last. The system exists to protect people like you. What about criminal charges? Carol asked. Can't Derek be arrested for this? Potentially, yes. Elder financial abuse is a crime in our state, but that's separate from the civil case to recover the property. The district attorney would have to decide whether to prosecute. Trevor looked at me carefully. Would you want to press criminal charges against your son? Would I? Part of me recoiled from the idea. He was still Derek. Still the baby I'd held, the child I'd raised, the young man I'd been so proud of when he graduated college. But another part of me remembered sitting alone in that airport, abandoned and confused, while Derek and Vanessa celebrated their victory. I want my house back, I said. Whatever it takes to make that happen. Then let's make it happen. Trevor pulled out a stack of forms. I'm going to need you to sign some paperwork authorizing me to act as your attorney. Since Aunt Linda already discussed it with you, I'm taking this case pro bono. I interrupted. Once I get my house back, once I can access my home equity if I need to. I don't want charity. Trevor smiled. Deal. But let's worry about payment after we win. Right now, we focus on building the strongest case possible. We spent the next 3 hours going over everything. Trevor had me walk through the entire timeline, starting from when Derek and Vanessa's visits became more frequent and ending with me refusing to board the plane. He asked detailed questions about their specific statements, their promises, their behavior. They said I could visit the house anytime. I remembered that it would always be my home. Did they put that in writing anywhere? I thought back. No, it was all verbal. That's typical. Verbal promises that won't be legally binding. Trevor made a note. What about the retirement community? Did they show you a lease or contract? No. Just the brochure. And they never discussed the cost with you directly. Not until I asked Derek about it on the phone yesterday. I pulled up the conversation. I have that call in my recent calls list. I didn't record it, but you have the text messages that followed. Trevor said, scrolling through my phone. He stopped at one particular message from Derek. If you don't get on that plane, where are you going to live? That's good. That's very good. It shows he knew he'd put you in an impossible position. Trevor took screenshots of several messages. These demonstrate that once you questioned the plan, he became aggressive and threatened your housing security. That's not how someone acts when they genuinely have your best interests at heart. Around noon, Trevor packed up his briefcase. I have everything I need to file the emergency petition. I'll submit it to the courthouse this afternoon. We should hear back within 48 hours about the restraining order. What do I do in the meantime? I asked. Stay here with Linda or Carol. Don't go to the house alone under any circumstances. We don't want any confrontations that could be used against us. Don't communicate with Derek or Vanessa except through me. If they contact you, don't respond. Document everything but don't engage. He handed me his business card. My cell number is on there. Call me anytime, day or night. After Trevor left, the three of us sat in exhausted silence. I need to go to the house, I finally said. I need to see it. See if they've already started. I couldn't finish the sentence. Maggie, Trevor said. Linda started. I know what he said. But it's still my home, Linda. Even if the deed says otherwise. And I need to know what they're doing with it. I stood up, feeling stronger than I had in days. I'm not going to confront them. I just want to see. Then we're coming with you, Carol said firmly. You're not doing this alone. 20 minutes later, we were in Linda's car, driving through my neighborhood. It was a beautiful autumn day, the kind James had loved. The trees were turning gold and red, and the afternoon sun cast everything in warm light. As we turned onto my street, my heart started pounding. There was Derek's car in the driveway, and beside it, a white van with a company logo I didn't recognize. Stop here, I said quietly. Linda pulled over 3 houses down, where we could see my house but weren't obviously watching. The front door opened, and Vanessa emerged with a woman in a business suit. They stood on the porch, my porch, talking and gesturing. The woman was taking notes on a tablet. That's a real estate agent, Carol said. I'd bet money on it. My hands clenched into fists. It had been less than 24 hours since the signing, and they were already preparing to sell my house. We watched as the real estate agent walked around the yard, taking photos with her phone. She pointed at the roof, at the garden James had planted, at the big oak tree in the front yard where we'd hung a tire swing for Derek when he was little. Derek came out then, and even from this distance, I could see he was smiling. shaking hands with the real estate agent. Vanessa looped her arm through his, both of them looking at the house like it was a prize they'd won. I'm going to be sick, I whispered. Linda pulled out her phone and started taking photos. Evidence, she said grimly. Trevor will want to see this. We watched for another 10 minutes. The real estate agent took more photos, measured the front yard, examined the outside of the house from every angle. Finally, she shook hands with Derek and Vanessa again and got in her car. After she drove away, Derek and Vanessa went back inside. Through the living room window, my living room window, I could see them talking animatedly, gesturing around the room. They're already planning what to do with it, Carol said softly. Probably talking about staging it for sale or what repairs to make for better resale value. Something broke inside me then. Not broke down, broke open. Like a door I'd been keeping carefully closed had suddenly burst wide, and all the anger I'd been holding back came flooding through. Let's go, I said, my voice steady and cold. Linda asked. To my house. I want to confront them, Maggie, Trevor said. I don't care what Trevor said. I was already opening the car door. That's my home. Those are my things. And I'm not going to sit here and watch them celebrate stealing from me. Carol grabbed my arm. Wait, think about this. If you confront them now, it could hurt your legal case. Or it could help it. I met her eyes. They think I'm on a plane to Florida. They think they've won. Let's see how they react when I walk through that door. Linda and Carol exchanged glances. Then Linda nodded. Okay, but we're going with you. And I'm recording the whole thing on my phone. The three of us walked up the street together. With each step, my resolve strengthened. This was my home, mine and James's. Derek may have the deed right now, but he didn't have the right. And I was going to make sure he knew it. I didn't knock. This was still my house, and I still had my key. I unlocked the door and walked in. Derek and Vanessa were in the living room, looking at paint samples spread across my coffee table. They both froze when they saw me. Mum. Derek's face went pale. What are you? You're supposed to be in Florida. I changed my mind. I stood in the doorway of my own living room, flanked by Linda and Carol. I decided not to get on the plane after all. Vanessa recovered first, plastering on a bright smile. Maggie, you gave us such a scare. We've been so worried. Why didn't you call? We tried reaching you dozens of times. I blocked your numbers, I said calmly. After the 23rd call became harassment. Harassment. Derek found his voice. Mom, we were worried about you. You just disappeared. We thought something had happened. Something did happen. I woke up. I stepped further into the room, looking around at my home. I woke up and realized my son had manipulated me, lied to me, and stolen my house. Stolen. Mom, you signed the papers willingly. After months of you telling me I was too old, too confused, too incompetent to manage my own life. My voice rose despite my efforts to stay calm. After you convinced me I needed to be in a retirement community I can't afford. After you lied about Carol being there to help me. After you booked me a one-way ticket to get me out of the way so you could do exactly what you're doing right now. I gestured at the paint samples, at the real estate agent's business card lying on the table. Selling my house. The house your father and I spent 40 years paying for. The house we made a home. The house that's supposed to be my security in my old age. Derek's expression hardened. The house is legally mine now. You signed the deed over. If you've changed your mind, that's unfortunate, but it's done. We'll see about that. I pulled out my phone and took a photo of the paint samples and business card. I've hired a lawyer. We're filing an emergency petition to void the deed transfer on grounds of elder financial abuse and undue influence. Vanessa laughed sharp and mean. Good luck with that. We have a notarized deed. You signed voluntarily. No court is going to side with you just because you have seller's remorse. Is that what you think this is? I stared at her, this woman who'd called me mom, who'd eaten at my table, who I'd welcomed into my family. Seller's remorse. What else would you call it? Vanessa crossed her arms. We spent months trying to help you, Maggie. Trying to get you into a safer living situation. And now that we've finally succeeded, you're having second thoughts and trying to blame us. You were never trying to help me. You were trying to get my house. I turned to Derek. When did you decide to do this? When did you look at your mother and see a mark instead of a person? Mom, that's not fair. Fair. My voice cracked. You dropped me at an airport like I was a burden you couldn't wait to be rid of. You didn't even wait to make sure I got through security okay. You just left. And an hour later, you were meeting with a real estate agent. So tell me, Derek, when exactly were you planning to inform me that you were selling the house I thought you were managing for me?" Derek and Vanessa exchanged glances. Some silent communication passed between them. "We were going to tell you," Derek said finally, "once you were settled in Florida, once you'd had time to adjust, once it was too late for me to do anything about it." I shook my head. "You're not even a good liar, Derek, you never were. I just didn't want to see it before. You need to leave." Vanessa said sharply, "This is Derek's house now. You're trespassing." "Am I?" I looked around the living room at 40 years of memories. Because it still has my furniture, my photos, my husband's ashes in that urn on the mantel. Does that count as trespassing? Being in the house I paid for, surrounded by the life I built. Mom, please. Derek sounded tired suddenly. "Don't make this harder than it has to be. The papers are signed. The house is mine. You can fight it if you want, but you'll just waste money on lawyers and lose anyway. Can't you just let it go? Move on. Let it go." I stared at my son, this stranger wearing Derek's face. "You want me to just let go of my home, my security, my life, to make things easier for you? It would be better for everyone," Vanessa said, "including you. The sooner you accept this and move to Florida, the sooner you can start your new life." "My new life," I laughed bitterly. "In a retirement community I can't afford, abandoned by my only child, with nothing to show for 40 years of work and sacrifice except 2 suitcases of clothes. That's not." Derek started. "Get out," I said quietly. They both stared at me. "This may be your house on paper," I continued, my voice gaining strength, "but until a judge says otherwise, I'm not leaving. And I'm certainly not going to stand here and watch you redecorate and plan your windfall. So get out. Both of you." "You can't." Vanessa began. "Yes, I can." I pulled out my phone. "Linda's been recording this entire conversation. We have you on video discussing selling the house less than 24 hours after you manipulated me into signing it over. We have photos of you meeting with a real estate agent. We have all your text messages threatening me when I didn't get on the plane. My lawyer says that's evidence of elder abuse. So, unless you want me to add harassment to the charges, I suggest you leave." Now, Derek looked at Vanessa. For a moment, I thought they might refuse. Then Derek grabbed his jacket from the back of the chair. "Fine, we'll go. But Mom," he stopped at the door. "You're going to regret this. We tried to help you, and you're throwing it back in our faces. Don't come crying to us when you fall and break a hip, and there's no one there to help you." "I'd rather break every bone in my body than accept help from you again," I said. They left. I watched through the window as they got in Derek's car and pulled out of the driveway too fast, Vanessa gesturing angrily, Derek's face set and hard. Then, finally, they were gone. I stood in the middle of my living room, shaking from head to toe. Carol wrapped an arm around me. Linda was already on the phone with Trevor, filling him in. "You did good." "Maggie," Carol said softly, "you stood up for yourself." "I just kicked my son out of my house," I whispered. "No, you kicked 2 con artists out of your house." "There's a difference." I wanted to believe her. But all I felt was empty and sad and so tired. Linda hung up and came over to us. "Trevor says the recording is perfect. It shows they were already planning to sell, which proves their intent was never to manage the property for you. He's going to use it in the emergency petition." "Good," I said numbly. "He also says you should stay here tonight. Change the locks first thing tomorrow. Make it clear you're reclaiming the property." Linda squeezed my shoulder. "You're doing the right thing, Maggie. It doesn't feel like it right now, but you are." I looked around my living room. Everything was the same. Same furniture, same photos, same urn on the mantel holding James's ashes. But everything felt different. "I want to be alone for a bit," I said. Just to sit here." "In my home." Linda and Carol exchanged worried glances, but they nodded. "We'll be right outside," Carol said. "On the porch. You call if you need us." After they left, I sat in my favorite chair by the window. The same chair where I'd had my morning coffee just yesterday, not knowing it might be my last morning in this house. Through the window, I could see the garden James had planted. The roses were still blooming, their late-season flowers bright against the autumn leaves. "I'm fighting for us," I whispered to James, wherever he was. "I'm fighting for everything we built. I won't let them take it." And sitting there in the fading afternoon light, I felt something settle inside me. A quiet determination, a strength I hadn't known I possessed. They thought I was weak, confused, easy to manipulate. They thought I'd give up and go away quietly. They were about to learn just how wrong they were. The locksmith arrived at 8 o'clock the next morning, a cheerful man named Ray who'd been changing locks in the neighborhood for 20 years. "Heard you had a break-in or something?" he asked as he worked on the front door. "Something like that," I said, not wanting to explain the whole sordid story. "Linda, Carol, and I had spent the night at my house. My house," I kept reminding myself. We'd checked every room, taken inventory of what was there and what might be missing. So far, everything seemed untouched except for those paint samples on the coffee table, which I'd thrown in the trash with perhaps more force than necessary. "All done," Ray announced, handing me 3 shiny new keys. "Front door, back door, and side entrance. Nobody's getting in without your permission now." If only it were that simple. After Ray left, Trevor called with news. "The emergency petition has been filed. The judge has agreed to an expedited hearing tomorrow afternoon at 2 o'clock. That's incredibly fast. Usually these things take weeks." "What does that mean?" I asked, putting him on speaker so Linda and Carol could hear. "It means the judge sees the urgency of the situation. The fact that they were meeting with a real estate agent less than 24 hours after the signing really helped. The video Linda took was perfect. It shows clear intent to profit immediately from the transfer, which supports our argument of undue influence and exploitation. Will Derek and Vanessa be there?" "They'll be notified. Their lawyer will definitely be there." Trevor paused. "Maggie, I need to prepare you. They're going to paint you as unstable, maybe confused. They'll say you're having regrets, but that the transfer was legitimate. Be ready for that?" "I'm ready," I said and meant it. After we hung up, I spent the morning doing something I hadn't done in months. Just living in my house. I made coffee in my kitchen. I tended James's roses in the garden. I sat in every room remembering the life we'd built here. Carol found me in Derek's old bedroom, staring at the walls we'd painted blue when he was 8 because he wanted a room like the ocean. "Second thoughts?" she asked gently. "No, just remembering. He was such a good kid. Carol, so sweet and loving. He used to leave me notes around the house. Little drawings with 'I love you, Mom' written in crayon." I touched the wall. "When did that kid disappear?" "Maybe he didn't disappear. Maybe he just grew into someone you didn't raise him to be." Carol sat beside me on Derek's old bed. "You and James did everything right. Sometimes people just choose wrong, choose greed over love, choose themselves over family. That's not your failure. That's his." We sat in silence for a moment. "Are you scared?" Carol asked. "About tomorrow?" "Terrified," I admitted. "But I'm more terrified of what happens if I don't fight. If I just let them win. Then we fight." Carol stood and held out her hand. "Come on. Linda's making lunch, and then we're going to prepare you for that hearing. You're going to walk in there tomorrow and tell your truth. And the judge is going to listen." That afternoon, Trevor came over to prep me. We went through everything again, the timeline, the specific things Derek and Vanessa had said, the pressure tactics they'd used. "They'll argue that they were genuinely concerned about your welfare," Trevor said. "Be ready to explain why that doesn't hold up. The one-way ticket, the immediate airport drop-off, the retirement community you couldn't afford, the real estate agent the very next day. All of that shows their real motivation." "What if the judge sides with them?" I asked. "Then we appeal." "But I don't think it will come to that. Your case is strong, Maggie. We have documentation, witnesses, video evidence, and a clear pattern of exploitative behavior. Most importantly, we have you. And you're clearly competent and articulate. When the judge hears you speak, they'll see that you weren't some confused elderly person who needed saving. You were a capable woman who was systematically manipulated." That night, I barely slept. I kept rehearsing what I'd say, how I'd explain what happened without sounding bitter or vindictive. I wanted the judge to understand that this wasn't about a family dispute. It was about my right to my own home, my life, my own choices. The next afternoon, we arrived at the courthouse early. Trevor met us at the entrance, looking sharp in a dark suit. "Deep breaths," he said to me. "You've got this." Inside, the hallway outside the courtroom was busy with lawyers and clients. And there, standing near the door with a man in an expensive suit, were Derek and Vanessa. Derek saw me and his expression hardened. Vanessa whispered something to their lawyer, who nodded and made a note on his legal pad. Don't engage. Trevor murmured. Let them stew. We sat on a bench across the hall. I could feel Derek's eyes on me, but I kept my gaze forward. Linda sat on one side of me, Carol on the other, both of them silent pillars of support. Finally, a bailiff called us in. Patterson v. Patterson, Judge Morrison presiding. The courtroom was smaller than I expected, wood, panelled and formal. Judge Morrison was a woman in her 60s with steel grey hair and sharp eyes that seemed to take in everything at once. We took our seats, me and Trevor at one table, Derek and Vanessa with their lawyer at another. The judge reviewed some papers, then looked up. This is an emergency hearing regarding a petition to void a property deed transfer. Mr. Martinez, you're representing the petitioner? Yes, Your Honor. Trevor stood. We're seeking an emergency restraining order to prevent the sale or transfer of the property in question, and a full hearing to void the deed transfer on grounds of elder financial abuse and undue influence. And Mr. Blackwell, you're representing the respondents. Derek's lawyer stood. He was polished and confident. Yes, Your Honor. My clients contest these allegations. The deed transfer was legitimate, properly notarized, and voluntarily signed by Mrs. Patterson. This appears to be a case of seller's remorse rather than abuse. Judge Morrison turned to me. Mrs. Patterson, I've reviewed the petition. I'd like to hear from you directly. Can you explain in your own words what happened? I stood on shaky legs. Trevor had prepared me for this, but standing in a courtroom, about to accuse my own son of elder abuse, felt surreal. Your Honor, I'm 72 years old. I've lived in my home for 40 years. My husband and I paid off the mortgage, raised our son there, built a life there. My voice steadied as I spoke. After my husband died 5 years ago, I continued living there independently. I managed my own finances, maintained the property, had an active social life with friends like Linda Chen, who's here today. I gestured to Linda, who nodded from the gallery. About 6 months ago, my son Derek and his wife Vanessa started visiting more frequently. At first, I was happy about it. I'd missed having them around. But their visits always included comments about my age, suggestions that I was struggling to manage, implications that I was becoming a burden. Can you give specific examples? Judge Morrison asked. They'd point out if I forgot to lock a door, suggesting I was becoming forgetful. They'd comment on my speed going upstairs, implying I was becoming frail. They brought me brochures for retirement communities, telling me how much easier life would be if I didn't have to worry about home maintenance. I took a breath. Separately, each comment seemed like normal concern. But together, over months, they created a narrative that I was no longer capable of living independently. And you began to believe this narrative. Yes, Your Honor. I started doubting myself, started thinking maybe they were right, that I was too old, too alone, too vulnerable to manage on my own. What happened next? They convinced me to sign over my house to Derek for safekeeping, while I moved to a retirement community in Florida near my sister. They said Derek would manage the property for me, that I could visit any time, that it was just to make things easier. I pulled out my phone. But the retirement community costs over $4,000 a month. My pension and Social Security total about $2,800. I couldn't afford it, and they knew that. Did they discuss the financial aspects with you? No, Your Honor. They just showed me a brochure and said it was all arranged. I found out the real cost after I was already at the airport. Judge Morrison made a note. Tell me about the day you signed the papers. This was the hard part. They brought a notary to my house at 9 in the morning. The papers were full of legal language I didn't fully understand. When I asked questions, they reassured me it was just standard procedure, that nothing would really change. I signed, and then, immediately after the notary left, they told me they'd booked me a flight to Florida that afternoon. They'd already packed my bags, just 2 suitcases from 40 years of belongings. They drove me to the airport and dropped me at the curb. Didn't come inside. Didn't make sure I was okay. Just left. My voice cracked, and I paused to compose myself. They told me my sister Carol would be there to meet me in Florida. But Carol wasn't even in town. She was at a conference and hadn't been told I was coming. The ticket was one way. And when I started asking questions from the airport, when I realized I'd been manipulated, they became aggressive, threatening. Trevor stood. Your Honor, I have the text message thread. May I approach? The judge nodded, and Trevor handed up printed copies of the messages. She read through them, her expression growing more severe with each page. Mr. Blackwell, she said to Derek's lawyer, your client texted, if you don't get on that plane, where are you going to live? That sounds like a threat to me. Mr. Blackwell stood smoothly. Your Honor, my client was expressing legitimate concern about his mother's housing situation if she chose not to follow through with the plan they'd all agreed upon. The plan she'd been manipulated into agreeing to. Trevor interrupted.